पानी दे, गर्म पानी.
और चाय?
चाय नहीं, बस गर्म पानी. Okay, please settle down. So, yesterday, we were talking about the Cholas. Now, what we'll be doing today is we will try to cover the period. Once we finish the Cholas, we'll focus more on the 1000 to the 12,000 period. Okay, so once we focused on the Cholas in South India, once we finish that focus in South India, we'll go to North India. And in North India, we'll focus on the 1000 AD to 12,000 AD, the 200 year period before the arrival of before you see the arrival of the Lodi dynasty. Okay, so we will look at whom? The ones who are known for breaking a lot of temples. Muhammad Ghori, Mahmud Ghazni, Ghazi attack. Seen the movie Ghazi attack?
Yes.
So that Ghazni angle comes from Ghazi. And in North India, what we see is that once the Pratiharas are gone, you remember yesterday we talked Pala Pratihara. Once the Pratiharas are gone in North India, you see that from northwest comes the outside invaders who try to establish themselves in the regions. And who are these? These are the Tughlaqs. Tughlaq kaun the? वो coin wale. Who minted his new coins? Tughlaq, right? So the Tughlaqs, the Khiljis, and the Ghauris. Okay, so that period we'll look at in North India. But before that, we'll just finish this. In the next class, we'll look at in the north, whom? The Mughals predominantly. Lodhis and predominantly the Mughals. And in the south, predominantly the Vijayanagara Empire and the Bahmani. The Vijayanagara Empire and the Bahmanis. Okay. So that's by and large it. इसके अलावा जो छोटे topics हैं, like the Portuguese, like the Sikhs, that is also I'll cover. Okay. So today is the second class. I think 2 more classes and medieval would be largely done. Now our focus, we are not getting into medieval in too much depth. The only understanding is to broadly know who came after whom, what was the reason, if there is any, for a major decline of any ruler or any kingdom as such, and key administrative aspects of works associated with literature, etc., with some period. Okay, and architecture and literature partly associated with some period. That's it. So because most of your medieval section, as I've told before, also is important largely from prelims perspective. Okay. Now, so we were discussing the Cholas, and yesterday I told you the Cholas were the ones who themselves were great patrons of Vaishnavite as well as the sect of Hinduism, and Hinduism in general. They were great patrons of it, and they built a number of temples. Also, they were patrons of the Shivite tradition or the Shiva tradition, and the sculpture making under the Cholas is considered to have reached its peak. You all know what is that? The Nataraja. I will suggest you, देखिए, the book that I suggest for you to read for art and culture, apart from what ma'am has done in the class with you, you do that, the NCRT. 11th NCRT art and culture, word by word, you should know. People keep asking कि और क्या पढ़ना है, वो याद रखिए. उसमें से if you see, most conceptual questions are there. Basic conceptual questions like that dance forms have Tribhanga. So Tribhanga is given in that book also. Tribhanga was asked in your exam also. Once they asked that temple architectural style, what does Panchayatna mean? 5 edges, star shaped. That is also given in that book. Simple. So rather than running to, देखिए एक चीज समझ लीजिए, जो आपके जैसे लोग और हम मेरे जैसे लोग किताब लिखते हैं वो क्या होती है? घटिया किताब. जैसे नितिन सिंघानिया, you copy paste from 10-15 sources, put it together, that doesn't make it a book. That makes it a guidebook. I'm not saying that guidebooks are useless, but you should know where to use guidebook. The topic which is not given in that NCERT and you still have to read that topic, you may pick up the guidebook. But if it is given in NCERT and you read from guidebook, you are committing a sin. And how is sin punished? By a question not given in the guidebook but given in an NCERT, which is 10 times smaller than the guidebook, and yet you read the guidebook. Because you need guidance. You seriously need guidance. Do not read guidebook on topics which is given in the NCERT. Temple architectural style, कोई सर फोड़ने का जरूरत नहीं है. Very excellently given in art and culture NCERT. Okay, you may say painting sir is not given. Paintings I'll study from there. Paintings में what? Miniature style painting, राजपूत पेंटिंग, तांजौर पेंटिंग, थांजावुर पेंटिंग, जो भी 2-3 स्टाइल है, क्या की फीचर्स है, that you may study from there. So you should be knowing how to use a source rather than saying which source. Use the NCERT for art and culture predominantly, along with ma'am's notes. If at all something is not done, then suppose you have a Nitin Singhania, you open the index, see, अच्छा, there is something mentioned here about painting styles. Painting पे पहले question आया हुआ है, हाँ आया हुआ है. Let me read the painting style. Puppetry, okay, puppetry is not there in ma'am's note or in class. I have not done puppetry. Let me read puppetry from here. Just selectively 2, 3, 4 things you can read. And my suggestion remains, pluck those pages out and add it to your notes so that you don't have to open that book again. Or if you are sentimental towards books, get it photocopied and add it to your notes. Okay, so that is there. So I am very sentimental about books, but about guidebooks I am ruthless. I'll pluck guidebooks. Okay, so it is that is your approach. What should be, and the more you can link, the better it is. Okay. So, for example, it was the Cholas under which you see this art of image making reached its peak. And here we say, what? The Nataraja thing. अब ये सिर्फ याद नहीं करना है. If you go to the NCERT, those fellows have mentioned everything. There is a separate box and they have mentioned everything in that box about the Nataraja. That what is he doing? Tandav. That you know. Does that mean he is happy or angry? Angry. Right? The god of destruction. Right? What is the circle? The flame circle, right? Life circle and flame circle, and everything is important here. By which hand he is holding what tak is important is written in that book. Which book? NCERT. Separate box, it is written. That right hand there is a damru. That this left hand there is a flame. That this leg. Which leg? This leg. Okay, can't underline. This leg is doing what? Is killing a demon which is not visible. And this leg is already killing a demon which is visible. This leg is killing that demon, what? The demon of desire. Okay, so and then they also mentioned mudra mudra. राइट लेग, अब आप बोलेंगे कि सर आपने नहीं पढ़ाया, अरे लिखा है एनसीईआरटी में, राइट लेग इज इन अपसमरा, दिस लेग is in this mudra, the left leg is bhujan gatra sita, whatever that means. But I am telling you what are they trying to show in this is that he is killing the demons. Okay, and bhujang as bhujang tarasita. So that's there. In the right hand he is holding a damru. In the left hand he is holding a flame. And this circular thing is also called as what? This circular thing around the is the Jwala Mala. This is all made of flames. You see? These all flames. This is called as the Jwala Mala. Now that is why I am saying, please read the NCERT. That is important. Okay. So these are basic things. You should know the mudras. You should know that what does this seem, and it is in which stance? The Tandav. And which signifies that the god is angry and unleash destruction. So that's something about what? The Natraja. And that's one thing. The other thing is actually sculpture attained, the tradition began under the Cholas, but after the Cholas were in a decline, you see, it was Chalukyas and the Hoysalas who carried forward the tradition of sculpture making, whether that was out of bronze or stone. And the most important part of this is what? In Bangalore, in the Karnataka region, the Gomateshwar, right? You read this? The single biggest rock statue of whom? Of Jain Tirthankar, Bahubali, and this is made out of granite rock, single. What does this signify? That Jainism also received strong what? Patronage in the south. In fact, it is in the Karnataka region that Jainism received a very strong patronage under the Hoysalas. Under the Hoysalas, the Jainism received a strong patronage. So, here comes a very simple and logical point. What about Kannada? Will Jainism promote the proliferation of Kannada or not? Is Jainism a religion which aimed to involve the masses? Yes or no? Yes. Right? Jainism was a religion which was in a reaction to Hinduism, originally associated to involve the lower groups, and especially led by the merchants or the traders, but also other guns. That is why they always chose which languages to begin with? Non-Sanskritic languages, whether that was Prakrit. And it is Jainism's work also which led to a proliferation of which language also? Kannada. The growth of Kannada also received a huge boost with Jainism. And Jainism anyways finds a strong mention in this presence in this region in the south. Okay, just telling you that. Now, religious movements during the 8th to 12th century. Now, it is here. I just want to discuss a few more points from a prelims point of view which are important. Firstly, there is a revival of Hinduism and a continued decline of Buddhism and Jainism. Dekhiye, one of the things is, as I told, Jainism for Buddhism, once who are gone, the Palas, the support for Buddhism drastically declines. Also, what about Jainism? Jainism did find support where? In the Hoysala region, but beyond that, there is no major support for Jainism. The larger southern states, whether they were the, when you talk of the big Deccan state, that is Rashtrakuta, they also supported Hinduism. When you talk of the big Chola state, that also supported Hinduism. So Hinduism flourished in the southern states as the major states supported the rise of Hinduism here. And Buddhism was confined to the east, ruled by the Palas. To the east, ruled by to the east, ruled by Palas. And the internal developments in Buddhism. Now, in Buddhism also, you see the rise of which school? The Tantric school of Buddhism. Dekhiye, the Tantric school of Buddhism rose primarily, and it was this school of the Tantric school of Buddhism rose at this point of time. And what does it talk about? You know, the Vajrayana type of Buddhism. Now, where is this Vajrayana Buddhism coming from? What does it involve? It involves a series of, firstly, Buddhism often talked about what? Giving up desires and material, comfort, etc. Vajrayana बोल रहा है कोई problem नहीं है, आने दो. Material comfort, okay. Next, they are saying that the Tantric form of Buddhism involved the use of rituals. And with the use of rituals also partly, they often talked about what? Having supernatural powers or extraordinary powers. That humans could gain extraordinary powers or godlike powers by performing rituals, etc. Okay? And that is that they could see, beyond sight, they could hear beyond sight, all those kind of things, or they could mentally communicate beyond thousands of kilometers, all those kind of things. Magical powers. Now, in this context, R.S. Sharma, Satish Chandra writes a very interesting line. Very profoundly philosophical. बीच में पुरानी NCERT में वो एकदम अपनी philosophy भी दे देते हैं. And he writes that there is not just the right of Tantric form of Buddhism, but there is a Tantric school in Hinduism also. The Nagpanthis. Okay, ये अभी कुंभ वाले मेले में भी दिखते हैं वो. Right? So the Nagpanthis also as another Tantric form of Hinduism. There is a Tantric form in Buddhism also. There is a Tantric form in Hinduism also. Why? He writes a very philosophical and an important line to say that the desire of humans to profess powers not known ever before was a common binding element. And the only way of acquiring such powers was often seen as through religion. Today, and he writes that indirectly in that today modern technology has given humankind many of those powers. You can talk thousands of kilometers sitting here or not. Earlier you need Tantric form of Buddhism and Hinduism to do that. Before Wi-Fi, before telephone, before 3G, what was there? Tantric Buddhism, Tantric Hinduism. They could talk thousands of kilometers. Mentally, they could talk. See what is happening. Abhi aapke paas Google talk. You can see. Tell your friend, dikhao bhai kya ho raha hai wahan. Earlier they had tantric forms. Okay. So in that context, they say that the emergence of tantric form of Buddhism and Hinduism was partly motivated by this desire to acquire capabilities beyond any human. You know, that's the point of being God. What's the point of being God if you are not different from everybody else? Right? And who can acquire this? You can acquire this by dedication, etc. Now, another common thing about tantric form of Buddhism and Hinduism is that they were open to whom? Lower caste. Buddhism anyways always was open to lower caste, but tantric form of Hinduism is also open to lower caste. Don't worry, I'll write, you can write with me. Just understand. Why am I telling you? Because ये prelims के लिए important है. The tantric form of both Buddhism and Hinduism are open to lower caste groups as well. They place no caste restrictions. They recognize no caste restrictions as such. That is also something which is very common about them. Also in South India, you see at this point of time, there is the rise of another thing. There is the rise of another thing. And what is that? In religion, Lingayat. ये भी important है. Lingayats, Karnataka में, they rose again as a reaction to what? The problems of Hinduism. And Lingayats also criticized the caste system, criticized rituals, and criticized idolatry. And Lingayats were also a reaction to Hinduism. Okay, that they arose at this point of time in South India. That's also one thing to note. Okay. Now, so you can just assume the forms. So Vajrayana Buddhism or Tantric Buddhism, this involved what? It did not emphasize giving up. Did not emphasize giving up worldly, material comfort, also did not emphasize giving up material, worldly material comfort. Also argued that through rituals, meditation, natural powers like Shaktiman के साथ होता है ऐसा. He does all the sadhana in the world and then all of a sudden he can fly around, see around, do around anything. It's like Vajra, that's like, you know, Tantric Hinduism. You know, though he says it is because of Vedas, but nowhere ever in Vedas do you read anything of this sort, that by doing meditation you can turn around at certain kilometers per hour. Okay, so it can't. So that through rituals, otherwise Ramdev ji would have already acquired all of that. So also argued that through rituals, meditation, supernatural powers or superhuman capabilities could be acquired. Now also you see that Buddhism, also we see that Buddhism assumed forms that made it difficult to differentiate itself, difficult to differentiate from whom? Hinduism. In the sense that even you already know that Mahayana form of Buddhism anyways had started worshipping what? The idolatry had already started with Mahayana form, right? So the Mahayana form of Buddhism already had idolatry. Now तो they have rituals also and mantra also. तो अब रह क्या गया? हो गए made in India. So Hinduism and Buddhism, or Hinduism already with Mahayana, already Buddhism had idolatry. Now they are doing ritual, सब कुछ. So हो गया. Now they are already becoming remarkably similar to Hinduism. Jainism is popular more amongst trading community. Shah वाले लोग, Amit Shah, who is he? He's a Jain. Amit Shah is a Jain. So the Shahs of the trading communities from Gujarat were the ones. Yes, he's a Jain. But he says that Jainism also is Hinduism. Abhi Hinduism, constitutionally speaking, everything which is not Islam or Christianity in India is Hinduism. Okay, so that is there. So Jainism was popular amongst trading communities, and the Chalukya rulers, of Gujarat patronized Hinduism. Remember, I told you, once the Rashtrakutas are gone, who come? Chalukyas. Chalukya rulers patronized Jainism in a major way, and at certain times the Chalukyas extended up till Mount Abu also. And they had friendly relations with the Rajputs also actually. So they got to establish a Jain temple in Mount Abu. That you know about? The Dilwara temple, right? So made of what? मार्बल. देखिए फोटो देख लेते हैं. ये दिख रहा मार्बल जैसा लग रहा आपको? नहीं लग रहा है? मार्बल है इस पे. जैनियों के पास जहां भी उन्होंने बनाया है कमी नहीं होने दी है. If you go to Rajasthan also, wherever Jain temples you see exquisitely done, कोई पैसे की कमी नहीं होने देते भगवान को. So very well made temples, very exquisitely crafted and made of marble by Vimal Shah. Between 1000 to 1010. And there's a sculpture of Mahavira also. Dilwara temple. Mount Abu. Now, Hinduism, there is a growth of Shiva and Vishnu worship. We already discussed about that. And there is a growth of Tantric form of Hinduism as well, which rejected what? Caste. There is a tantric form of Hinduism as well, which rejected caste differences and was open to all. There is also in Hinduism the rise of Bhakti movement. देखिए, Bhakti movement you have read before, right? So there is what? The rise of Bhakti movement is partly, again, did the Bhakti movement was open to the lower castes? Yes, it is also open to women, both to lower castes and women. It was open, and it pleased a religion where there was a bond of love between the god and the worshipper. So God was not just one who had to be respected, but there is a bond of love and affection through which the devotee reaches out to God. And they also rejected all forms of social inequalities. Right? So they rejected caste inequalities and were open to lower castes and women. And they preached religion as a bond of love between the god and worshipper. And they were led by popular saints called as Nayanaras and Alvars. And they rejected what? They rejected a rigid social order. Also, if the Bhakti movement was a more liberal form of it was a more liberal form of Hinduism in that way. At the same point of time, there is a growth of what? Another reaction to Hinduism, and that is the growth of the Lingayat or the Veer Shiva movement, which was founded by whom? Baswa. And they oppose what? The caste system. ये सब प्रीलिम्स में पूछा हुआ है पहले भी. मैम has taught you. अगर नहीं भी पढ़ाया तो मैं पढ़ा रहा हूं. पढ़ाया है तो आपका रिवीजन हो रहा है. ठीक. But if you place it in context, you study both of them together. It's the best way to study. Okay. So they oppose the कास्ट सिस्टम. अ लॉट ऑफ यू की वरिंग कि सर ये पढ़ाया जाएगा कि नहीं. अरे आपको इतना पढ़ाया जाएगा कि आप बोलेंगे कि सर आप बस मत पढ़ाओ. बट द रियल गेम एक्चुअली नोबडी गेट्स सिलेक्टेड फ्रॉम आवर टीचिंग. लेट मी बी वेरी ऑनेस्ट. हमारे पढ़ाने से या किसी के पढ़ाने से किसी के सिलेक्शन नहीं होती. सिलेक्शन आपके पढ़ने से होती है. मैं तो पढ़ा के चला जाऊंगा. देयर विल बी फ्यू पीपल हु विल रिवाइज, हु विल से हाँ सर ने ये पढ़ाया, ठीक है. एनसीईआरटी भी पढ़ता हूं, उसमें क्या है. हाँ सर told 5-6 points, NCERT there is another point, let me write it to my notes. ऐसे लोगों की सिलेक्शन होती है. कई देखिए आप ये भी 3 बार रिवाइज करके जाएंगे. एटलीस्ट यू इंश्योर दैट यू रिवाइज दिस ऑल्सो 3-4 times. यू आर इन वेरी गुड हैंड्स. बट आप अगर ये भी नहीं रिवाइज कर रहे हैं 3-4 बार, मतलब प्रॉब्लम है. ओके, सो दैट इज देयर. यू रिवाइज इवन दिस मच. आई एम अश्योरिंग यू, इसमें से अगर आपसे नहीं होगा तो किसी से नहीं हो रहा होगा. और ये कॉन्फिडेंस एग्जाम में बहुत जरूरी है. दैट्स इट. So there is a growth of Lingayat or the Veer Shiva movement founded by Baswa, and it opposed the caste system, idolatry, and thus is more liberal. The growth of the Sankara philosophy. ये देखिए, ये पढ़ा आपने? The growth of the Sankara philosophy. Okay. And what is this philosophy say? No belief in God. What is non-dualism? What is non-dualism? Anybody? There is nature and there are humans and both are separate. That's non-dualism. तो dualism क्या है? The fact, देखिए, Brahma is the creator. Say, the creator has created you. You have been created by the creator. You are a creation of the creator and both of you are different from each other. आपको तो बनाया है भगवान ने, and you are a separate entity and God is a separate entity. That is dualism. But I say, yes, God has created or not created वाला point ही नहीं है. Every being is a manifestation of God. There is no difference between the creator and the created. That is non-dualism. मतलब you are an embodiment of God. Whatever has been created, living, non-living, everything has God or nature in it. That's it. There is no duality that God is separate and the creatures created by God are separate. That is what is this philosophy of Sankwara or Advaita. Dve means two, Advaita means not two, one. God and creator. So let me just aapko that the creator and the created are not what? Separate. The creator and the created are not separate. The creator and the created are not separate entities. Okay. Every being is a manifestation every being is a manifestation of the creator. Now, every being is a manifestation of the what? Creator. Okay. Now, what did they preach? That is what they are preaching. And the philosophy is also called as Vedanta philosophy. Now, Ramanuja himself is who? Ramanuja himself is what? Is a philosopher. And what is his role? He supported which philosophy? This Advaita philosophy. Okay. Ramanuja supported the Advaita philosophy, and what is he in effect trying to do? In effect, he is actually going to be the one who is actually going to be a bridge. Okay, he is going to play an important role in the revival of Hinduism in the south, and also modifying Hinduism primarily on this logic of what? Advaita, or the philosophy of non-dualism. Hanji? They are preaching this idea that the creator and so their philosophy is what they are preaching, and their philosophy is what? That the creator and the created are one. Okay. And so it is here that Ramanuja played an important role in reviving Hinduism and spreading the Advaita philosophy that is there. Now, one of the things, so that is something that you must know. Another thing is, now, apart from this, there are three other names that you should know: Madhavchara, Ramananda, and Vallabhacharya. All these are also what? They are actually trying to do what? They are trying to carry forward the work by Ramanuja himself. Okay, so they are also philosophers in the south whose primarily role will become in the spread of both Hinduism as well as the Advaita philosophy. So all of these fellows are working in this direction. Yes. Every being is a manifestation of creator, has soul in it. नहीं, God and soul अलग है ही नहीं. मतलब आपके अंदर ही भगवान है वाली बात है ये. इसका मतलब ये नहीं है कि God has created you and has put soul in you. वो नहीं है. आपके अंदर ही there is God. मतलब you and God are not separate, not dual, single. That is what Advaita is. Because that idea, what that idea, which idea? That God created you and there is soul in you, and the Creator has created you and there is soul in you. That is that idea that God is Brahma and you are the soul, and then you are caught in the cycle of birth and rebirth, and then you will reunite with the Creator. वो सब कोई फंडा ही नहीं है यहाँ पे. That is why, because when I say that soul is separate and God is there, this is dualism. This is non-dualism. When God and that is not separate. What? Soul. Anything else? Any other thing that you want to ask? Now, so that's about the role of Madhavacharya, Ramananda and Vallabhacharya also. Okay. Now, that's all that we need to talk about in terms of the Cholas. Okay. So what do you see? Just to summarize all of this that we did yesterday and today, is that you have in the 8th to the 10th century, what do you have? That in North India you have the Palas and the Pratyaharas, and they have the rivalry between them. And the rivalry between them is over the control of one key city in North India, which is that Kannauj. North India में Pala and Pratyahara है, Venki है, South India में. आप बोल रहे हैं, how can they have a rivalry? They have a rivalry over the control of Kannauj. Kannauj is the major center of power before Delhi emerged as the major center of power. Delhi is emerging as a major center of power only in the 12th century. Before that, it is Kannauj. Okay, in Western UP, it is Kannauj, which is the center of power. They have this rivalry. The Palas were known as patrons of Buddhism, and they sent even renewed Buddhism in Tibet. They are based out of Bengal. Ultimately, the Palas are subdued by whom? The Pratyaharas. And the Pratyaharas extended themselves into North India. But eventually the Pratyaharas are being subdued by whom? The Rashtrakutas. And the Rashtrakutas subdued not just the Pratyaharas in the north, but the Chola, Chera, Pandya, everybody in the south also. And it is these Pratyaharas, ultimately they face a Mahagadbandhan in south, ultimately which ensures their defeat. And the Rashtrakutas face this Mahagadbandhan in the south, and ultimately they face a defeat. And you see that once that happens, once the Rashtrakutas become weak, you see a number of other regional players emerge. One of them in the Deccan region are the Chalukyas. In the south, you see are the Cholas, right? The most powerful players. And the Cholas were important. Why? Because they managed to extend trade in a major way with Southeast Asia. Okay, that is there. So the Cholas extended themselves in a major way into Southeast Asia and were a major trading power and had a significant naval presence also, right? And the Chola rulers also even managed to capture up till on the eastern coast up till Bengal, even in the plains of Ganga. And to that extent, they also were Gangais Cholapuram, right? And then ultimately they patronized a large number of flourishing. Their trade also allowed them to patronize a large number of temples. And the Brideshwar temple is the clearest and the biggest example of it, which is perhaps the biggest temple in South India, or perhaps in India itself, right? So that is there. Now, also in the social sphere, we just discussed that there is at this time the emergence of partly the Bhakti. There is the emergence of the Lingayat tradition. There is the emergence of the Vajrayana tradition or the Tantric tradition in both Hinduism and Buddhism. Revision is very key. कहानी पढ़ के आप अगर ये देखिए 5 मिनट में if you revise, then it is a very good point. And then you remember अच्छा Cree name Ramanuja, Vallabhacharya, etc. etc. They are also there. And in philosophy there is Advaita philosophy coming up. Yes.
Does it mean that they were completely removed from the area, or just the decline of Rashtrakutas? They were partly present.
Were they? Is there a decline? Is there a complete decline of Rashtrakutas? Finished over a period of time. They are, and that's there. And one of the other things about Ramanuja also is that they were most supporters of Vaishnavism. even in Hinduism, Vaishnavism is something that they strongly supported. Okay, so and again, here is another important thing. Bhakti mein you have Meera, and that also involves Vaishnavism. So Ramanuja's contribution was also this, that he acted as a link between what? Bhakti type of Hinduism and Hinduism in proper. Okay, so Ramanuja is the one who's talking about Vaishnavite form, and Vaishnavite form was also one of the ones which involved a good degree of what? Bhakti traditions within it. So another contribution of Ramanuja was Vaishnavite tradition of Hinduism is what they propagated the most, and they also were a link between the Bhakti and the Vaishnavite tradition of Hinduism. क्या है, एक एक शब्द पढ़ने की कीमत बताता हूं मैं आपको. Question came in the prelims examination. Who amongst the following were Bhakti saints? Ramanuja. हाँ, पता सबको. एक ऑप्शन था Ramanuja. Other was this Vallabhacharya and Ramananda. And then you had to pick up 1, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. जहां एनसीईआरटी में पेज खत्म होता है वहां लिखा है रामानुजा. नेक्स्ट पेज पे क्वेश्चंस हैं, उसके ऊपर 2 लाइन लिखी है रामानुजा, पेज खत्म, नेक्स्ट पेज पे एंड वल्लभाचार्य एंड रामानंद. हो गया आपका. आपने आखिरी चैप्टर खत्म होते हुए पूरी मेहनत करी, आखिरी शब्द छोड़ दिया और गेम हो गया. So my suggestion is don't run to many. One source. देखिए मैं आपको सिंपल बता रहा हूं, अगर एनसीईआरटी से आपसे नहीं हो पा रहा है तो किसी से नहीं हो पा रहा है, अनलेस ही इज अ ऑप्शनल स्टूडेंट, वो भी मुश्किल है. ओके, सो दैट इज व्हाई डोंट बैंग योर हेड कि अरे नहीं सर और बता दो, अरे ये तो याद कर लो. राइट. So, and if you actually, the old NCERTs are available in the market, right? Printed form, उसपे ऊपर अगर आप देखें अब तो क्या लिखा है क्रॉस करके फर्स्ट पेज पे, for reference only. They are so comprehensive that they themselves have become reference books. Okay, so that is why that is more than, especially जो medieval की है, अरे भगवान, वो NCERT पढ़ लें आप तो बड़ी achievement hai. Now if you pick up the medieval Indian NCERT, my suggestion is which chapters you should read. In whichever chapter you pick, always there are subheadings. Read the heading of administration, art and architecture and literature. If you want to read that section. Okay, Mughal period, art and literature. कुछ आएगा तो ज्यादातर there's a better chance of it coming from there. So that's there. But even if you don't read, you do this much. That is also enough. Next. Finally, we come just a second. Now, देखिए अब आ जाइए एक दूसरे समय पे. हजार. अब नाउ वी आर कमिंग टू नॉर्थ इंडिया. 10,000 to 12,000 AD. अभी आप सबका बहुत खून खोलने वाला है. इन्होंने बहुत टेम्पल तोड़े, भर भर के तोड़े. हाँ है? अरे अभी रुके ना, साउथ इंडिया वापस आएंगे. क्यों नहीं आएंगे? ऐसे थोड़ी है. अभी विजयनगरा आना है, बहामनी आना है, विल कम बैक. ओके, सो बनाएंगे भी. अभी तो तोड़े हैं तो बनाना भी तो पड़ेंगे, राइट? सो द गजनविद्स, देखिए दिस इज द पीरियड इन 1000, देखिए वेयर who are going to come to India are the invaders from Central Asia, partly from an Afghan origin. They will plunder North India greatly from 1000 to 12,000 AD. Why? Why do they get to plunder North India? Because neither are the Palas there nor the Pratyaharas. The Palas and the Pratyaharas are not there. There is no strong power in North India. So obviously, and there are no Rajputs also right now. Rajputs emerge. Technically, Rajput emergence is noted in roughly in this period, where once the Pratyaharas diminish and disappear, they disintegrate into, and there is from there the emergence of the Rajputs. So the Rajputs are yet to become strong entities in their own might, and it is at this time that yes, Rajputs are there, but there is no strong power like a Pratyahara or a Pala in North India, and so will begin the invasions from India's northwest. Okay, and it is whom? Mahmud Ghazni. देखिए, the word Ghazi, what does the word Ghazi mean? हाँ वो जगह है, but what does the word Ghazi mean? The word Ghazi means, yes, the word Ghazi, गजनवे हिंद बनाएंगे भारत में. कैसे बनाएंगे? एलिमिनेट नॉन मुस्लिम्स. अब आप सोचेंगे कि सर ये आया कहां से? ये लड़ाई थी, ये जंग थी, किसके बीच में? भारत का इससे कोई लेना देना नहीं है, साउथ एशिया का इससे कोई लेना ही देना नहीं है. The term Ghazi came because the Afghans and the Iranians who fought whom? The Central Asians. The Central Asians were tribal people, and the Central Asian tribes attacked Afghan and Iranian territories, and so came the term Ghazi. The Ghazi would be a soldier who would not just be any soldier, but a soldier who would also be a religious soldier, who will eliminate whom? The Central Asians. Why? Because they are non-Muslims. But it did not bring in another thing clearly, that this Muslim non-Muslim conflict was primarily a conflict over territory. The Ghazi was to be the soldier who would fight to ensure that the Central Asians did not invade the Afghans and the Iranian region. That is it. That's where the term Ghazi originates. तो आप जब बार बार कई there are many Muslim terror groups which say, Islamist terror groups which say that गजनवे हिंद बनाएंगे. गजनवे हिंद का मतलब क्या है? In India, Ghazis will rule and non-Muslims will be eliminated. So, but the point is that Ghazi, पहली बात, India was never गजनवे हिंद. Secondly, the idea of गजनवे हिंद or the idea of Ghazni comes from Afghan Central and the conflict between Afghans and Central Asians. Okay, that is there. उनने भी अपनी हिस्ट्री नहीं पढ़ी है. दिक्कत ही सबके साथ ये है कि हिस्ट्री किसी ने नहीं पढ़ी है. Okay. तो उन्हें भी पढ़ाने की जरूरत है. So now that's there. So here that is where the term Ghazi comes from. Okay. And it is in this context that Mahmud Ghazni is considered one of the most important Ghaznavid rulers. Why? Because it is under him that the Ghazis plundered North India in a major way. Firstly, they subdued Central Asians. हम उसमें नहीं लिखना है, बस मैं आपके समझ के लिए बता रहा हूँ. They subdued Central Asians. Central Asians को उन्होंने साइड किया. Then they came to, देखिए, for a certain period, North Indians were saved. Because the Ghazis had to fight whom? The Central Asians. But once they defeated the Central Asians, then they focused on North India to plunder and loot. Okay, and that is where you see the plundering of the Somnath temple in Gujarat, or the destroying of the Nalanda center of learning, and many other temples. It is said that Mahmud Ghazni invaded and plundered India. What? 17 times. 1998 to 1030 plundered 17 times. And he would plunder, he would loot and take away the enormous reserves of the north. Okay, including plundering of the famous Somnath temple in Gujarat. Okay, so they plundered up till Gujarat in the south, and in the north up till the northern plains, up till even Bihar. They destroyed even the Nalanda center. So that is what is there. That's the extent of whom? Ghazni. So this is, but were they ever the real rulers in this region? Well, the answer is no. They were not the rulers. They were predominantly the plunderers. I'm giving you that overground first. Okay. And it is once the Ghaznis are gone, comes whom? Gauris, the Ghurid dynasty. So after you see actually this period, this is the plundering period, 1000 to 1030, 30 saal mein khub plundering they are doing. But after them, after what? After they decline whom? The Ghaznis. Comes whom? The Ghurid dynasty or the Gauri. Muhammad Gauri. But by this time, I'm giving you a broad overview first, then we'll write, don't worry. Okay. When in the 1100s, the Ghurids are coming to India, but by this time, who have consolidated in themselves? The Rajputs. In the northwest, who have emerged as a major power by this time are the Rajputs. And so begins the heroic tale of the Rajputs. In that sense, that who? Prithviraj Chauhan is considered that important ruler who made a strong resistance to whom? The Ghurid dynasty. Okay, or Muhammad Gauri. Almost defeated Muhammad Gauri in a very important battle. The first battle of Tarain. Where? In the Punjab region, Bhatinda region. I'm giving you a broad sense first. Okay, I'll show you a map, then it will become clear. But eventually Gauri will do what? Defeat. Ultimately, Prithviraj Chauhan was defeated. Okay. And in the very next year, when Gauri returned in the second battle of Tarain. Tarain is the Bhatinda region where the Rajputs are emerging and in a fight. Prithviraj Chauhan himself was a Chauhan ruler, and the Chauhans were Rajput clan which ruled from where? Ajmer. Okay. So they were the most powerful players in this region, and they were to pose a resistance to it. There would be another resistance which will be posed, and I want to show you a map first, then I'll come to it. देखिए, चलिए ये वाला मैप नहीं, उस पे बाद में आते हैं फिर. So you understand, okay, just this much you understand first. The Ghaznavids came first. कौन? महमूद गजनी, फिर महमूद गौरी. Ghaznavid rulers, they plundered, looted and went back. Once they declined, who came? The Gauris. And when the Gauris came, this is the time when whom? The Rajputs have emerged. And the Rajputs have emerged and they pose a strong resistance to Gauri, the most famous being that of Prithviraj Chauhan. Okay, that is there. So let's just, there are a few more details that we need to know from here. Broad ही पता होना चाहिए यहाँ पे. Actually there are many battles. ऐसे तो फिर हम, you know, that's not there. But the most important battles are one in which the Prithviraj Chauhan almost once won and then eventually lost in the next year. Okay. Now the Ghaznavids, Ghazi was a religious soldier who would भेज दो किसी को, वो राजेश को, किसी को भेज. Religious soldier who would defeat and eliminate non-Muslims. The Ghaznavids first defeated whom? Central Asians and then turned attention towards North India, turned attention towards North India, where the absence of a strong empire like Pratiharas allowed them to plunder repeatedly. Allowed them to plunder repeatedly. Now, a number of some literary works which were written at this time were what? Firdausi, who was a poet in the court of whom? Mahmud Ghazni or Muhammad Ghazni. He wrote what? The Shahnama book and the Kitabul Hind Al-Bruni. अरे जो बोलना है बोल लीजिए. BRUENI भी लिखा है कल जगह B. So Firdausi wrote the book Shahnama, and Kitabul Hind was written by Al-Bruni. What did Al-Bruni's work write about? He wrote about the Hindu society in South Asia, and he wrote a very neutral manner, not critical of the Hindu society or its practices or beliefs. So Al-Bruni basically wrote about the Hindu society and the practices prevalent in the South Asia region, as he saw at this time when he came at this time as he came during the time of Ghazni. Now, the role of Mahmud Ghazni is that he defeated in South Asia, in North India, the king Jaipala. Who's Jaipala? Actually, Jaipala is another one of the kings who is an emerging Rajput king, okay, in this region, and he defeated them, and he also defeated the Turks, as I just told you. The most important battle, actually not that important, but agar koi पूछे, then that is the battle of Vaihand, and this is where in Peshawar. ये सारे battle कहाँ हो रहे हैं? On the northwest border. On the northwest border, and it is in this which is near modern day Peshawar that you see that a defeat was imposed upon Jaipala, and between 1018 and 1025 repeated plundering including the Somnath temple and the Nalanda University or the Nalanda Center of Learning were done. Next is the Ghurid dynasty. देखिए, मैं तो आपसे कह रहा हूं, आपके जीवन में बिल्कुल समय ना हो और आपसे सतीश चंद्र वाली एनसीईआरटी भी ना पढ़ी जाए, तो व्हाट शुड यू रीड? एटलीस्ट रीड वो नई वाली, वो 6th-7th क्लास के बच्चों के लिए जो है, हाँ वही गिरा लीजिए अपना लेवल, उतना ही गिरा लीजिए, लेकिन वो भी कर लीजिए. डू नॉट लीव द टॉपिक, प्लीज डोंट लीव इट. Even the thing that we discussed yesterday in Cholas, Ur and Mahasabha, that मैं तो आज ऐसे ही देख रहा था कि क्या है, वो भी दिया उसमें और वो भी पूछा गया है. अरे 6ठी-7वीं का बच्चा भी बोल देगा मुंह पे आके, अरे भैया नहीं हुआ आपसे, हम बताएं. क्या इज्जत रह जाएगी? वो बोलेगा आप करने गए यूपीएससी की तैयारी, हमसे ही पूछ लेते फोन अ फ्रेंड. ऐसा नहीं होना चाहिए. ओके, सो that is also there. If you can't do the thick one, you do at least that much. That also will help. But do something, you know, do not leave the topic. Okay, मैं जितना पढ़ा रहा हूं इसके साथ या वो 6th-7th वाली जो मेडिवल के एनसीईआरटी है वो पढ़ लीजिए. अगर आप सतीश चंद्र वाली नहीं पढ़ सकते तो कोई बात नहीं है, you know. The Ghurid dynasty was established in 1173 to 1206 by Muzzin Muhammad, who was also known in India as Muhammad Ghori. And again, it was a strong resistance was offered to him by the Chauhan rulers, in Chauhan rulers from Ajmer, who fought with the Ghurids over the control of Punjab region. And in Bhatinda, you have a major battle, the first battle of Tarain in 1191. The first battle of Tarain in 1191. It is in this battle that what is happening? That our hero, पृथ्वीराज चौहान, हिंदुओं का नेता पृथ्वीराज चौहान और मुसलमानों के नेता के बीच में हुई लड़ाई, कौन जीता? अखंड हिंदू. Chauhan almost managed to, that's how history is portrayed, that he was fighting for Hindu cause and he was fighting for Muslim cause. जबकि ऐसा कुछ है नहीं, everybody is fighting for their cause. जैसे क्या है, ममता दीदी is fighting to save democracy and Modi ji is the honest ruler. One is honest, one is fighting to save democracy. Supreme Court said what ki? Huh? Supreme Court is saying ki, so I mean, it's a tricky situation. Supreme Court said what? Ki the Kolkata, that the CBI said that the Kolkata chief is trying to destroy evidence. The Supreme Court said you show us one proof that they are trying to destroy evidence, then we'll give you all powers to go ahead, etc. The matter has been postponed for I think Monday or Tuesday, I think. क्या हुआ?
सीपीआई के सामने जिताने के लिए बोल दिया शिलोंग में होगा
शिलोंग में होगा?
न्यूट्रल प्लेस
वाह वाह, इंडियन डेमोक्रेसी इज रीचिंग न्यू हाइट्स एवरी डे. ओके, सो चलिए जो भी है. सो मतलब यू सी हेयर ऑल्सो देयर इज अ बैटल बिटवीन हिंदुइज्म एंड इस्लाम. ऐसे वी शुड लर्न. ओके, सो ऐसा नहीं है, but the predominant thing is that this is the Rajputs are, yes, but this much is true that the Rajputs were strong followers of Hinduism. There is no doubt about it. At the same point of time, these fellows are themselves a bit more hardline Muslims. That also is true. Now, the first battle of Tarain in 1191 was where Prithviraj Chauhan almost killed Mahmud Gauri. Almost killed, but he managed to, some soldier managed to save him, and he, went back. And he did preparations and came back the very next year. And it's not that Chauhan spared his life or anything. Chauhan was not trying to spare his life or anything, but he managed to escape. And it is at this time that in the next year he comes back more prepared. Chauhan also tries to do what? Chauhan also tries to form a strong alliance here in the region. But this was the thing about the Rajputs. The Rajputs, for all their brotherly Rajputana, never united to fight Mahmud Gauri. The ruler from Kannauj, who himself was a Rajput ruler, Jayachandra, at this time did not join hands with. वरना आज हमारा होता अफगानिस्तान, पर करा नहीं इनने, सही टाइम पे हाथ मिला ही नहीं. Right? So the Rajput rulers did not join hands amongst themselves, and the reason was, and the region was, and the ultimate outcome of this was that he did manage to raise a strong army. Whom? Prithviraj Chauhan. But in the absence of a very strong player in North India, another Rajput ruler, Jayachandra's support, this campaign was not as effective as it could have been, and Mahmud Gauri managed to defeat Chauhan. Chauhan managed to escape, but eventually was captured and killed. Okay, and that is where you see that Mahmud Gauri, the challenge to him actually ended with the second battle of Tarain. Okay, so that is there. In the first battle, thus, you should know these names, क्योंकि ये बहुत ही important battle है. Okay, this name you must remember, the year and the name of the battle and who defeated whom, because that is important kind of from prelims point of view. So Mahmud Gauri was almost killed and defeated, in 1191. Was almost killed and defeated in 1191. When was almost killed and defeated in 1191 when Chauhan, Prithviraj Chauhan, attacked him. However, Gauri escaped and returned to impose a crushing defeat, to impose a defeat on Ajmer and Prithviraj. चौहान. तो फिर क्या होगा? प्लंडर. तो अगेन there is plundering which goes on after this period. Now after fighting the Rajputs, where are they coming? Almost up till they, yes, after fighting whom? The Rajputs. Their influence now is extending to northwest India. Their next major challenge is to expand into the northern plains. The northern plains, the Bengal, the Bihar, and the Gangetic Plains region, even the Awadh region, etc., and more importantly, Bengal and Bihar region. It is here that you see that Gurid, that Muhammad Ghori after Battle of Tarain is like, abhi ho gaya mera. He is like, he goes back to Afghanistan. He's tired of fighting war. He goes back to Afghanistan because he now wants to again fight whom? Central Asians. इनको सेंट्रल एशियंस पे वापस हराना था, लेकिन अभी तक सबके बाप आ रहे थे. अब कौन? मंगोल्स. वंस द मंगोल, देखिए, आई विल टेल यू वन थिंग. द अफगान्स प्लंडर्ड नॉर्थ, लेफ्ट, राइट, सेंटर. ओके, फ्रॉम 1000 to 1200 they plundered left, right, center. But 1200 came Godfather. Who? Mongols. मंगोल्स ने जिस पे हाथ डाला वो कभी नहीं बचा. And Mongols were plunderers of a much bigger order than the world has ever or till now has never seen the order of plundering that Mongols did. But Mongols did not plunder North India. Why? Who saved? Rajputs? Huh? The Khiljis and the Tughlaqs. The Khiljis and the Tughlaqs, the Delhi Sultanate, the slave dynasty, was the one which offered a strong resistance to Mongols and Genghis Khan's descendants. And except for a limited plundering which happened in the plains of Punjab, there was no large scale plundering which happened in North India, because the Mongols had partly started to decline and they faced a long and a strong resistance from the Delhi Sultanate, which had managed to survive, which had managed to establish itself in this region under the Khiljis, Alauddin Khilji, partly under the Tughlaqs, and partly a bit before them also. Okay, Balban, abhi main aunga. I'll tell you all those names. Wait. Now, it is in this context, I'll give you time to ask question. Now, so it is here that you will see that actually when the Mongols, so this is how I look at it. You know, एक ने टेम्पल तोड़े, दूसरे ने, अभी मंगोल आते तो फिर तो पता नहीं क्या ही होता. Okay, so the Mongols really did not come to India because of a variety of reasons, but one of the important reasons was also the strong resistance, because by this time in North India you had the Delhi Sultanate, which had managed to emerge as a good player, if not a very strong player, but a good player. And that is something which prevented. Long ago in ancient history, there is somebody by the name of Porus. And it is Porus who defended against whom? Alexander the Great. Did Porus defeat Alexander the Great? Not till now. Till now, Porus did not defeat Alexander the Great. But yet Porus was very important, because Porus offered such a strong resistance that Alexander the Great's army took some time to defeat Porus. Ultimately, Porus was defeated, but Alexander did not kill Porus and reinstated him. But even then, Alexander's army did not move further. Why? Because of the Nanda rulers. Because of the Nanda rulers. The Nanda rulers were so strong that the fact that the Nandas had a large army and a large cavalry as well as a large number of elephants. Because of which, what? Alexander's army refused to fight any further. They said, हमने नहीं लड़ना, हम जा रहे हैं घर. R.S. Sharma writes a very interesting philosophical line. Alexander, who had never faced a defeat ever in his own life, was defeated by his own army, who refused to fight any further. तो ऐसा हो जाता है कई बार, strong leader wants to fight, but his army itself doesn't want to fight. I envision a world where India and Pakistan, उधर से नवाज शरीफ कहता है एक मारोगे हम ये मारेंगे, हमारा बोलता है एक मारोगे घुस घुस के मारेंगे. Then फिर क्या हुआ? Then what happens is soldiers don't fire each other, soldiers they pick their guns and leave. बोले ये मारना चाहते हैं जिसको मार लें आपस में. Let them. Pakistani soldiers take their gun and go back home. Watch Coke Studio and relax. Indian soldiers also come back and like जिसको politicians can go. आप एक मारना एक politician को, हमारे वाले 10 मारेंगे तुम्हारे वालों. Right. So they can settle it out. देखिए आप सोचिए ना, यहां कौन लड़ रहा है लड़ाई में? पृथ्वीराज चौहान खुद लड़ रहा है कि नहीं लड़ रहा है? हाँ, आज वाले लड़ते वड़ते हैं नहीं, स्ट्रॉन्ग लीडर है. अरे मनमोहन सिंह तो है ही वीक लीडर, लेकिन स्ट्रॉन्ग लीडर भी नहीं लड़ रहे बॉर्डर जाके. इनको दे देनी चाहिए गन, टैंक में बैठी गए थे टैंक चढ़ा देते. No, it's a very important point. Do you see there's a very important difference? There's a very, very important difference. Today war fighting does not involve the king. But back then war fighting involved the king. अच्छा, कल ही पढ़ाया था चोला रीजन में डेमोक्रेसी थी कि नहीं थी? कल आप आए नहीं थे, कोई बात नहीं. तो in that context, if you look Rig-Vedic period, is there democracy in Rig-Vedic period? Yes or no? Yes. In the Rig-Vedic period, early Vedic period, Jana, there is relative democracy. Okay. So in that context, मतलब ये मैं सोचता हूँ कई बार, जो भी strong leader मेरे हिसाब से यही है जो बोले कि मैं खुद लड़ूंगा बॉर्डर पे जाके, आगे से आई विल लीड इंडियन आर्मी एंड नॉट से पीछे से जोश हाई है कि नहीं, आगे से जोश हाई है, हाँ हाई है, आगे से लड़ेंगे, पीछे से नहीं. राइट. टेलीविजन पे नहीं, प्रेस में नहीं, आगे से. सर्जिकल स्ट्राइक मोदी जी खुद जा रहे हैं, आगे से चलो जवान. उनके पीछे पीछे अजीत डोभाल इज ऑल्सो गोइंग. Now, Turkish conquest of Ganga Valley in the Bengal and Bihar region, Kutubuddin Aibak. देखिए, now actually 1192 Muhammad Ghori went back to 1192, you can write 1192 Muhammad Ghori went back where? To Afghanistan. And it was Kutubuddin Aibak who, अभी इसमें कुतुबुद्दीन ऐबक who was given the charge of overseeing the affairs in the region. But then क्या हुआ? 1192 itself Ghori lost. Where? In Central Asia. Then Ghori is like, अरे अभी तो हो गया. Ghori lost in Central Asia. Then Ghori realized अभी नहीं हो पाएगा, क्योंकि कौन आ गया? तैमूर. ये वाला नहीं, लड़ने वाले. यहां वालों को और पता नहीं कहां कहां से खोद के ला रहे नाम. राइट. छोड़िए चलिए. Now, so in Central Asia, the Ghoris faced a defeat. And now Ghori said, let's go back to where we can win. फिर अब किसका नंबर है? जयचंद्र. That time did not join hands with चौहान. अभी जब पृथ्वीराज चौहान could not defeat, तो जयचंद्र वाला थोड़ा सा मामला डिफीट. इन द बैटल ऑफ चंदवार, आप रटें तो ठीक, नहीं रटें तो कोई बात नहीं. आई एम टेलिंग, बैटल ऑफ चंदवार बिटवीन मोहम्मद गौरी एंड जयचंद्रा. यू सी गौरी imposed defeat and extended influence to the northern plains, because Jayachandra ruled from Kannauj. Thus the battle of Tarain and Chandawar laid the foundation of Turkish rule over North India up till the borders of Bihar. Up till the borders of Bihar. Actually, who? These are, Gauris are Turkish in origin. And whom? Ghaznis were Afghan in origin. Okay, so there's a difference in their origin. Okay, but the Battle of Tarain and Battle of Chandawar laid the foundation of Turkish rule over North India up till the borders of Bihar. But Bihar was not defeated by them, because there were the Sena rulers in Bihar. Chale chhode wo sab. But up till the borders of Bihar they reached. And Rajput states. Okay, now one of the few things about the Rajput state, basic to pata hona hi chahiye. Written? Okay, right. I'll draw a map after this, just for your understanding purpose. I couldn't find a good map, so we'll make one out of our own imagination. Now, the Rajput states came into existence. You written till here, Battle of Tarain and Chandawar? Right. Now, as I just told you, that the Rajput states came up after the breakup of the Pratyahara Empire. And they came into existence in North India. The most important of these were, ये नाम आपको पता होना चाहिए. The Gadwalas are the ones who ruled from Kannauj. ये जयचंद्रा वाले. ये Parmars are ruling where? Malwa. Chauhans, Ajmer, हैं तो और भी Tomar, who partly ruled Delhi and areas around Delhi in the northwest region only. So Tomars are also there. Now the most important conflict was between whom? The Ghadavlas and the Chauhans. I told you, Prithviraj Chauhan and Prithviraj Chauhan and Jayachandra. They have a competition amongst themselves. That's why they don't join hands. And their competition, don't worry. ऐसे नहीं, ऐसे आप हाथ ऊपर उठ कर दिए और ऐसे नीचे कर दीजिए, तो मैं यहाँ से नीचे कर दूँ. So the conflict between them is over the control of Kannauj. Okay. So the conflict between Gadavlas and Chauhans was predominantly, Gadavlas and Chauhan was predominantly over the control of yes, Tomars, they ruled in northwest Delhi and around Delhi. Tomars at a certain point of time even controlled the Delhi region. But back then Delhi was not the important center. Kannauj was the important center. Now, was predominantly under the control of Kannauj. And the Rajput society was a clan-based society. Rajputana, आप बोलते Rajput, Rajput, भाई भाई, clan-based society. Religion, they strongly supported what? Strong followers of Hinduism. उसमें भी Vaishnavite tradition. टेम्पल हाँ कोई दिक्कत नहीं है. They also supported temple construction. And it is under them that the Chalukyans even were allowed to make the Jain temple. At Dilwara, that we have already talked about. Art and architecture. देखिए, one more thing actually, there's one more thing that I want you to know, that in their society, all the practices that you see, caste system, strong followers of caste system. They also patronized art and literature predominantly. और राजपूत स्टाइल ऑफ पेंटिंग सुना है आपने? विच स्टाइल इज इट? मिनिएचर स्टाइल और नॉट? Especially Jodhpur style is predominantly a very miniature, very exquisitely miniature and very detailed miniature paintings. So Rajput style of paintings. Have you discussed painting styles? Yes, no? Painting has not been done? Okay, so painting, dance, classical dance forms, music, कोई बात नहीं, हम सब कर लेंगे. एक ही क्लास में हो जाएगा ये सब. डांस, म्यूजिक, पेंटिंग एक क्लास में ही हो जाएगा ये सब, कुछ नहीं है इसमें. Okay. ऐसे देखना है हमें मेजर क्लासिकल डांस फॉर्म्स एटसेट्रा वेर एवर दे ओरिजिनेट, सम मेजर फोक डांस फॉर्म्स वेर दे ओरिजिनेट, एंड इफ देयर समथिंग यूनिक अबाउट देम, सम मेजर स्टाइल्स ऑफ पेंटिंग स्कूल्स इन इंडिया एंड सम मेजर म्यूजिक स्टाइल्स इन इंडिया. करा दूंगा मैं, चिंता ना करिए, आपका कुछ कोर्स नहीं बचेगा. आज जो रह जाएगी वो है आपकी क्षमता. आई थिंक केपेबिलिटी इज द रॉन्ग वर्ड. इच्छा, क्षमता तो बहुत है. सो दैट इज देयर रिटन. अब आ जाइए इन पे. ये देखिए, अब ये कहानी इज फॉर द नेक्स्ट 200 years. Briefly about the origin male testosterone in Delhi finds no other expression except this. When you can't bark enough, your bike must do the job, right? पूरे मोहल्ले को पता चलना चाहिए, a individual who cannot control temper or his testosterone is around. Beware, stay inside. Mad dog is barking outside. ना शांति से रहें, ना रहने दें. This is Delhi for you. I often imagine if Mughals would have been there, what would have they done to these fellows? They would have taken out their elephant and हो गया. Now here, now the next thing that we're going to talk about is actually a bit more complicated. because there are many rulers. Now your job is not to learn names of rulers, not required. What you should learn is which dynasty came after whom. Just that much. Every dynasty has 3-4 rulers. You can't remember. Just try to understand who came after whom as a dynasty. And writing can happen later. What you look is, remember, we just discussed whom? Qutbuddin Aibak. Aibak was appointed by Gauri. Now, when Qutbuddin Aibak died, Aibak dies in 1210. Now, here is this thing about Qutbuddin Aibak himself. Who was Aibak? Aibak was a slave. This is the beginning of the slave. Yes, concept kya hai? There is a term for this also, I'll tell you. Ye kya hai slaves? Who are these slaves? These are not normal slaves. These were able-bodied fighters who were recruited as slaves. It was often said that better than having a son is to have a loyal slave. Because a loyal slave would not revolt. A son would still revolt to take over kingship. And Aibak was appointed as a loyal slave by Gauri. Once Gauri died, Aibak then became independent. And it is from Aibak that we see the beginning of the slave dynasty. And it is this slave dynasty business which lasted from where? From almost, this is called the Mamluk or the slave dynasty. Just understand first, writing can happen later. So almost from 1200 to 1300 period, who is ruling? North. The slave dynasty. And this slave dynasty had 3 rulers after Aibak. Aibak died playing polo. Dangerous game. घोड़े पे से गिर गए, हो गई मौत. Iltutmish, Razia Sultan and Balban. Years are not important. Razia Sultan पे हमेशा फोकस रहता है because she is a woman ruler, sultan, right? She was a woman ruler or a sultan. इन पे पिक्चर बन सकती है, पोटेंशियल है. बिकॉज अरे ये है लव स्टोरी. रजिया सुल्तान had a love story also. Actually, she had a love story. So she had a relationship with one of her important Afghan military commanders. And Razia Sultan's Iltutmish was the father of Razia Sultan. ये तो बात समझने के लिए बता रहा हूँ, कुछ तो पता होना चाहिए. Iltutmish was the father of Razia Sultan. Iltutmish had 4-5 sons. He said ये सब useless हैं. He said all his 4-5 sons, nobody deserves to be the next king. Who deserves to be the king? Sultan, Razia Sultan. Razia, his only daughter. देखिए महिलाएं लड़कों से हमेशा आगे होती हैं, है ना. उसका एक ये रीजन ये नहीं है कि महिलाएं कुछ अमेजिंग हैं. उसका देयर इज अनदर वेरी सिंपल रीजन. फॉर देम टू कम एट द टॉप, दे डोंट हैव टू जस्ट प्रूव दैट दे आर एबल, but they have to be proved that they are much better than everybody else. So those who come out at the top have to be much better than anybody else. It's as simple as that. An average male can pass off as a king, but an average woman would never be allowed to be the king. You have to be exceptional, because then otherwise, because Razia Sultan's rule was not easily acceptable to anybody else, so she had to defeat a number of them to actually emerge as a strong ruler. This is as much as this. आपको क्या लग रहा है? मायावती is weak और ममता is weak. अरे ये weak होते तो ये इतने ऊपर आते ही नहीं. They are there, the Mayawatis and the Mamtas are there because if Modi is strong, they are 10x, because they managed to rise in a society which is deeply patriarchal. इनके सर पे तो कोई गांधी वाला हाथ नहीं था, ना ममता ना मायावती. Right, and they managed to rise at a time, and that too from the back, especially Mayawati, from the backward caste at a time. So these are immaculate leaders. I'm not saying good leaders. I'm saying they are also very strong. आप इन्हें एक गाली देंगे ये पलट के 10 देंगे. ये नहीं बोलेंगे डेकोरम मेंटेन करना है. अरे भाड़ में गया डेकोरम. They are as ruthless. They are as ruthless as any male ruler would be. So these are also, that's the same thing about Razia Sultan. Many people said that Razia Sultan, you can change your name or appearance. She said not. Neither change name nor appearance. And she minted coins in her own name. The only, Mughal ruler to have done that. The only slave dynasty ruler to have done that, or in North India, anywhere, ever a ruler to have done that. Women ruled in North India at times even before, at times even after this, but mostly in the name of their sons, who were often too small to take over throne. But Razia Sultan is unmarried. Ek to unmarried. Upar se she had a love affair with her Afghan military commander. So they caught hold of Afghan military commander and killed him. And Razia Sultan was captured by another one of his nobles. फिर Razia Sultan did what? Razia Sultan married that noble. And हाँ वो अभी मैं नाम में थोड़ा सा कमजोर रह जाता हूँ. तो and then he married. Then she married him and again tried to reconsolidate herself. So she is not the one who gave up. Ultimately she was killed. Only then she gave up. I am also reminded of her when I think of Bandit Queen. You've seen the movie Bandit Queen? एक बैंडिट क्वीन देखिए हम पिक्चर, और एक ऐसे ये मनी करने का और ये सब देखिए. अरे बैंडिट क्वीन को देखिए तो आप जरा, है ना. और फिर वो एक्टिंग और मदर इंडिया और वाली एक्टिंग देखिए, और आप ये देखिए, ये हमारे देश वालों से नहीं हो पाएगा. बॉलीवुड, मेन लाइन बॉलीवुड के बस की कुछ नहीं है, कुछ नहीं. दैट मच हैज बीन प्रूव्ड. चलिए, Mamluk dynasty is this dynasty. Once the Mamluks are replaced by whom? The Khilji dynasty. And the most important Khilji ruler was Alauddin Khilji. And then the Tughlaq dynasty, and the most important Tughlaq ruler was Muhammad Tughlaq. The Mongol attacks were strongly resisted by the Khilji dynasty and the Tughlaq dynasty. We will say Alauddin Khilji followed a very defensive strategy, and Muhammad Tughlaq followed a more offensive strategy. बिल्कुल basic पढ़ा रहा हूं मैं आपको, right? He followed a more offensive strategy against whom? Mongols. One followed a defensive strategy against Mongols, the other followed a more offensive strategy against Mongols, and we'll discuss that in a bit more detail. But ये broad आपको वो पता होना चाहिए, who came after whom. यही, otherwise you keep banging your head on this only, who came after whom. Now, written, लिख लीजिए, पहले लिख लीजिए. If I would tell you to remember the name of one individual in the Mamluk dynasty, then that is Balban. Because Balban was the one who consolidated the slave dynasty in North India in a major manner. I'll show you a map in some time. So Balban, Ghayasuddin Balban was the one who is the most important of these rulers. Iltutmish Sultan, Razia Sultan, etc. Qutbuddin Aibak laid the foundation of the slave dynasty. Laid the foundation of the slave dynasty. And Ghayasuddin Balban consolidated over North India. But they could not easily capture one region in North India, which? They could not capture one region in North India. Which? The Rajputs. That's why the Rajputs are important. Because the Rajputs often take pride in the fact that while, the slave dynasty and the Tughlaqs and the slave dynasty or the Khilji dynasty or the Tughlaq dynasty, though they managed to defeat everybody, but they could not defeat whom? The Rajputs. Ultimately, who defeated the Rajputs? The Mughals. Ultimately, it was the Mughals who defeated the Rajputs. So, ये broad नाम हो गए. Now you know the chronology. Let me show you a map. Written? Written? Now, if you see this map, what do you see? The Rajput area is the one which largely actually stays out of their control, whereas the slave dynasty, managed to extend their control over what? Okay, one thing now that I just saw the word Chandela, it reminded me. Their Chandelas are also whom? Rajputs? Yes, they are also the Rajputs. They constructed a very important temple. Khajuraho, which temple? The Kandariya Mahadev. नहीं? हाँ या ना? ये पता नहीं सर, जो भी है सब ठीक है बस. देखिए, the Khajuraho temples are constructed by the Chandelas in the 10th to 12th century period. They are in worship of which god? शिवा. अरे कंदरिया महादेव, इसीलिए तो याद रखना है जो सबसे बड़ा टेम्पल है इन द होल. आप लगे हैं कि नहीं खजुराहो टेम्पल बस कामसूत्र, अरे कंदरिया महादेव, शिवा temples constructed by Chandela rulers in the 10th to 12th century period. Khajuraho is where? मध्य प्रदेश, है ना. बेसिक इतना आपको पता होना चाहिए. देखिए, बहुत डिफिकल्ट नहीं है. इट्स नॉट दैट डिफिकल्ट इफ यू रिमेंबर जस्ट बेसिक इनफ. इट्स नॉट दैट डिफिकल्ट. कंदरिया, केंद्रीय नहीं, कंदरिया महोदय. केंद्रीय स्कूल बना दीजिए आप थोड़ी देर में. Kandariya Mahadev temple, which is a Shiva temple. Chaliye. Now, this is something that you must know. Now let's go to Niche, slave dynasty. Now, let's start one by one. By Qutbuddin Aibak. देखिए, कुतुबुद्दीन ऐबक ने क्या बनवाया? कंस्ट्रक्शन चालू करवाया, कुतुब मीनार, राइट. द कुतुब शाही डायनेस्टी, द कुतुब मीनार construction is something that has started under whom? Qutbuddin Aibak, later completed under Iltutmish, right? So that is there. Now, what about the iron stump there? Iron pillar? हाँ, erected by whom? Qutbuddin Aibak or Iltutmish? Before only मौर्य. अरे अशोक का पिलर है वो, अरे जिसपे जंग नहीं लगी. हाँ, अशोक स्तंभ और वो सब, वो जो आयरन स्तंभ है, राइट, मेड ऑफ आयरन and yet in thousands of years has not rusted. वो इनने नहीं बनाई है, ठीक है, वो आपको याद रखना है वो पॉइंट. ओके, नाउ Death of Muhammad Ghori was followed by Qutbuddin Aibak, as I already told you, taking over the reins of was followed by Qutbuddin Aibak, the slave, taking over the reins of North India. Ruled from Lahore. Ruled from Lahore. And Hassan Nizami was an important poet. Qutub Minar construction was initiated under his rule. And later completed under Iltutmish. Iltutmish, not written. Written? Iltutmish shifted the capital from Lahore to Delhi. Now Delhi is going to soon emerge as what? An important center of power. He introduced the silver coin or silver taka. Some, I think 175 grams or something, which became the basis of the modern currency rupee. Of the modern currency rupee. देखिए, before the gold standard, वो जो भी रुपी था, it was valued against the टका. एक टका बराबर कितना रुपी? That will decide. आराम से को बात. एक टका is equivalent to particular amount of rupee. So, say if एक टका is equal to 10 rupees or say 2 rupees, then the value of the rupee is decided according to 1 taka, and 1 taka is a silver coin. It's like the gold standard for rupee. You know, you're pegging the dollar or the gold against a rupee, against a solid currency. So that it's like pegging what? Rupee against the taka. And that is what is introduced under Iltutmish. Chahalgani, this is the term. A group of 40 what? Nobles. They had a council of ministers composed of 40 nobles who would aid a group of 40 nobles who would aid and advise the ruler. This term is important from your prelims point of view. देखिए एकदम basic limited बता रहा हूँ, that you can remember, जो prelims के लिए important है. Okay, advise the ruler over administration. And I already told you that they are going to play an important role in what? Defending against the Mongol attack. Razia Sultan. Razia Sultana. The female ruler who was the daughter of Iltutmish. For a brief period of 4 years, she was in charge and was eventually killed. The next major ruler who emerged was Balban, Ghayasuddin Balban. So, what was the role of Balban? Now, you written this much? Writing? Okay. Now, what is the role of Balban? Before coming there, you can just see this map. देखिए क्या देख पा रहे हैं आप इस मैप में? जो लाल और डार्क लाल, that's it, right? This inside was when Qutbuddin Aibak, was trying to control the region. There is a certain amount of expansion under whom? Iltutmish. And a bigger expansion happens under the Balbans. Now, you should actually, look at this. Now, there is something that is deceptive about these maps. When you see these maps, it looks as if the whole region was under their control. But that's not true. Their control, they were the predominant powers in these regions, that's true. But their control was limited only to certain garrisons that or their certain fort cities that they had built. Beyond it, it was very difficult for them to extend their rule and control. Firstly, they are outsiders. They had not much knowledge of local language, terrain, etc. And they face a general reluctance to their rule. So it takes certain amount of time for them, and their rule was often limited to few cities and garrisons that they managed to establish in these areas. And you see that here the darkest one is something which is the period under Balban. You see there is a expansion. Balban is going to consolidate. What is going to Balban do? Don't look below this, just look above this. Okay, just look up till the north portion, and Balban is the one who is going to consolidate it. What? The rule of the Slavic dynasty by defeating and by expanding. How? They had their garrisons. What they said is, we need to get out of the garrisons. What should we do? We need to tax the agriculture in the region. We need to clear the forest and establish more agricultural land so that there is more tax collection. So Balban is consolidating by expanding the area under irrigation, tax collection, etc., taking the Slavic rulers out of the garrisons into the open. Okay, that is what is happening under Balbans, under Balban. Okay, and I'll come back to this map again a bit later. So that's there about. Now the next thing, so about Balban is what you should know, that Balban played an important role in the consolidation of the Slavic dynasty. In North India, in the consolidation of the Slavic dynasty in North India. He followed a policy of blood and iron, is often said. Moved out of garrisons, taxed agriculture, an expanded area under irrigation, expanded area under agriculture. Expanded the area under agriculture. Balban also focused on rigorous discipline and started the practice of the nobles kissing his feet. यही तो होना रह गया. In Indian dynasties of today, this is the only thing that has left to happen. ऐसी हो. देखिए आपने कभी देखा हो तो मायावती जहां बैठती हैं जब, तो उनके आसपास कोई नहीं बैठता है. अगर आप कहीं देखा हो किसी स्टेज पे, if Mayawati sits, then nobody else sits. Everybody else is standing. Simple है. From the few footages that I saw initially of Mamta Didi was only sitting on chair. Everybody else was sitting जमीन पे, धरने साइड पे. अब फिर मैंने दिमाग लगाया ऐसा हो सकता है ममता दीदी has arthritis, so that is why she has chair. But then everybody else can also be given a chair. All of you also have chair also, no? Arthritis तो नहीं है सबको, right? So others could also have been given a chair, लेकिन ममता दीदी does not believe. अभी यही मोदी जी ने कर दिया होता तो बोलते is authoritarian rule. There have been many such meetings where Modi ji has taken MP का मीटिंग, उसमें मोदी जी ऐसे जैसे मैं बैठा हूँ प्लेटफॉर्म पे, बाकी सब MP नीचे बैठे. ऐसे तो बहुत फोटोज है, लेकिन कुर्सी पे तो है. पता चला कुर्सी नहीं है, खड़े हैं, मोदी जी बैठे हैं बस, या जमीन पे ही बैठे हैं बाकी सब. Right. So here what is happening? He started the practices where nobles must kiss his feet and pledge their loyalty to the king, because he did not wanted very powerful nobles. Now the administrative structure, in terms of this, there is the appointment of whom? Tariq or Twarik. What is they? Historians. ये इन्होंने चालू करा तभी तो हमारे पास यहाँ से बहुत, there is a lot of things which are written. Appointed, there is a appointment of court historians, and these court historians were called as Tariq or Tawarik. Basically plural is Twarik. What do these court historians will do? They will write the history of the court and the ruler. Is it going to be a very accurate assessment? Huh? Yes or no? अभी मोदी जी पे अमित शाह कोई किताब लिखेंगे तो क्या लिखा होगा उसमें? बड़ी ऑब्वियस सी बात है. These court historians, और कोई जेटली जी लिख दे, निर्मला सीतारमन लिख दे, या स्मृति ईरानी लिख दे, कोई लिख दे, गडकरी जी का पता नहीं. Appointment of court historians there, but however they at times exaggerated or portrayed rulers in a more positive light. Obviously बात है, who's paying them? Who's going to pay these historians? Their king. They write anything against the king. Well, the king will not salary तो छोड़ो. There is no, ऐसा कुछ नहीं है they can disagree with the king and as a king we don't agree with your policy, I'm writing in the book. कि पैसे क्यों दे रहे हैं भाई? You write what we tell you to write. So however at times the exaggerated one-sided view also happened. As I told you, in the early 13th century, the control of sultans rarely went beyond heavily fortified towns occupied by the garrisons. And even there is a strong Mongol threat. During this period, warded off by the Slavic rulers. Now the Tughlaqs. The Tughlaqs we have to talk about a bit first. Just a second. Garrison मतलब forted area. Now the Tughlaq dynasty. Written? Okay, please. They'll actually do what? They'll give you few statements and they'll ask you to pick up which of the following statements are true. That's the only kind of question we are expecting from these points. Okay. Now, done. Okay. Not done. चलिए. Now, खिलजी. हाँ, खिलजी को हमने उड़ा दिया. अभी खिलजी पे हम वापस आएंगे. चलिए पहले खिलजी पे ही आते हैं. रुकिए. रिटन नॉट रिटन. अरे क्या क्या कर रहे हैं आप? जल्दी लिखिए. Okay. The Tughlaqs. Actually, there is only one important point. There are two important administrative terms that I want to talk about Tughlaq. Then I will talk about Khilji and Tughlaq's approach broadly and their role in the Mongol case. Last thing for today. इसके बाद पैकअप है. ठीक है? शांति से आखिरी का सुन लीजिए. Important है. Okay. The Tughlaqs had this practice also of what? Bandagan. What does that mean? The Bandagan was a practice of, yes, buying slaves and appointing them to key positions. यहां स्लेव अलग सीन चल रहा है स्लेव्स का. These are not the normal slaves. There were two categories of slaves. One were for domestic purposes. झाड़ू पोछा सफाई. These were able military fighters who were slaves. Buying slaves and appointing them to key positions, and these slaves were able military fighters. जी बोले. हाँ. These were often of Afghan origin slaves. These were not the regular slaves which were for regular day-to-day purpose. They were only for military purpose. Very able fighter slave. Okay, and these were the ones who were cultivated by the king right from birth. बचपन से ले आते थे इन्हें. बच्चे की तरह पाला जाता था. With all perks. All because they were considered to be the most loyal ones. ये अलग स्लेव हैं, ये गरीब वाले स्लेव नहीं है. आप सोच रहे हैं कि इनकी कोई इज्जत नहीं है. इनकी बहुत इज्जत है. Much more than many princes were some slaves who were that valuable. Okay, and that is there. Now the iqtidar or the mukti, what is that term? Revenue collection. So the iqtidar or the mukti, they were land grants, revenue collection, and troop maintenance. What you need later know as what more as a Jagirdari system. That kind of a system is kind of emerging at this time, the Iqtidar or the Mukti. They also were the ones who were given land grants, and they, with this land grants, what do? Revenue collection. The revenue will be used for their own salaries as well as for troop maintenance for the king. These are the two terms that you must know from your prelims point of view. Is this point clear? One thing is that they are buying slaves for administrative positions, higher administrative positions, and also able military fighters, the most trusted ones of the king. For the day-to-day administration, they also started doing revenue collection by appointing iqtidars or muktis who are given land grants, and they are like the Jagirdari system that you see later. Last is Alauddin Khilji and Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Tughlaqi फरमान demonetization. कहा जा रहा था? That modern Tughlaqi फरमान. Why? Because the coin वाला scene आने वाला है अभी. So देखिए, Alauddin Khilji written. Okay, Alauddin Khilji and Muhammad bin Tughlaq. एक खिलजी रूलर, both का we are doing, both are doing what? Dealing with Mongols. Alauddin Khilji played an important role. Alauddin Khilji largely adopted a defensive approach in dealing with Mongol attacks, whereas Tughlaq followed an offensive approach. सिरी, ये सिरी क्या है? ये वाला सिरी नहीं है. सिरी फोर्ट. कौन सिरी? सिरी फोर्ट वाला सिरी, हौस खास के पास वाला सिरी फोर्ट. एप्पल वाला सिरी नहीं है. ओके, सिरी फोर्ट. आजकल जमाना इतना बदल गया है, क्या अगर बोले अरे सिरी मतलब एप्पल. I wrote Carl Sagan's quote yesterday. It's a very profound quote. We're living in 21st century in an era of technology where everybody talks technology, uses technology, but knows nothing about technology. ऐसे ही बहुत सारी चीजों में. तो ऐसे ये सिरी शब्द जो है, सिरी was the garrison in Delhi. सिरी फोर्ट ऑडिटोरियम, सिरी फोर्ट रीजन, हौस खास रीजन, वहां पे दैट इज वेयर द गैरिसन वाज. अरे तो हौस खास में जो वो पूरे वो हैं क्या, द हौस खास विलेज. हौस खास, हौस मीन्स व्हाट? अ पॉन्ड, सॉरी अ रॉयल बाथ. सर हौस मीन्स अ कलेक्शन ऑफ वाटर. खास मीन्स रॉयल. A royal bath and a royal collect, and for the especially for the use of royals, a place that was developed was the हौस खास. आज भी रॉयल्स ही ले रहे हैं वहां, पर थोड़े नीचे दर्जे के. So that is there. So Siri or garrison, the Siri garrison or garrison in the Siri region was established under Alauddin Khilji. Soldiers were paid salaries in cash. अभी यहाँ बड़ा इंटरेस्टिंग सा पॉइंट है. देखिए, he started the tradition of paying soldiers salaries in cash, not land grants. Largely, most soldiers were paid in cash. Now the problem with paying them in cash was that the traders could increase prices. The traders could increase prices. Why? Because by soldier is not getting a share of the produce or the revenue. He is not getting a share of the produce in kind or anything. He is only getting money. And this money will be used to buy goods. But the trader is like, let's increase the prices of the goods, we'll make more profits. So Khilji said, nahi, ye nahi hoga. Prices will not increase arbitrarily because we are giving our soldier cash. Ab he goes with that cash to the market and finds that prices are increasing. Then actually he will be dissatisfied. Right, and he will not be able to afford a standard of living, so he's saying no, prices have to remain stable. Regular survey करवाता था market का कि the prices must remain stable and traders do not unnecessarily increase prices. Who? Khilji. That is why Khilji's regime was remarkable for introducing cash also, but at the same point of time maintaining stable prices also. Okay, so that's an important point to remember. मुझे पता है आपको कोई मजा नहीं आ रहा है, लेकिन आना चाहिए. Right? So maintained stable prices. Maintained stable prices. To ensure that traders did not try to make unjust profits. अभी आपको क्या लग रहा है? जितको भी मिला है टैक्स रिबेट, मतलब सबको तो नहीं मिला है, बट जितको भी मिला है, the prices will increase. As liquidity increases, prices will also increase. Not of all commodities, but of definitely some particular kinds of commodities, prices will increase. Now, next, what about whom? Tughlaq. So, Khilji followed a defensive approach. He said, we'll restrict ourselves to the garrisons for now and we'll wait for the Mongols. Okay, but Tughlaq is like, nahi, we will defeat Mongols only. जिन्हें किसी ने नहीं हराया, उन्हें तुगलक हराएंगे. नहीं हो पाया तुगलक से. Okay, that is it. First thing is that he built a new fort. Whom? Khilji. But Tughlaq did not build a new fort. He got the old area depopulated and tried to keep the army there in the Delhi-e-Khona region. Matlab, this is the old Delhi region. And he said that people from here will shift to Daulatabad. Okay, so that is there. So he established his base in the Delhi-Khona region. Soldiers were again paid salaries in cash. पर इन्होंने क्या यूज किया? इन्होंने दिमाग लगाया. He introduced new kinds of coin. Copper coin he introduced. Now, he introduced copper coin, but copper was a useless metal. No intrinsic value. They said copper ka koi value nahi hai. So he introduced copper coin. People and these copper coins could be easily faked. People could make their own copper coins. So people started making their own copper coins. लोग तो भारतीय हैं. People started making their own copper coins. And they said that we will not buy anything with gold coins and silver coins. They started holding gold coin and silver coin and started paying in copper coins. But copper coin nobody was willing to take only. So people were not willing to buy and sell in copper coins. And then they said, "Arey, in copper coin ka kare kya?" They said, "We will pay tax in copper coins. Gold, silver, nahi, we will pay tax in copper coin." So Tughlaq introduced copper coin, and tax he only got copper coins, which depleted his financial reserves. Some people said the same about demonetization. Ye Tughlaqi farman hai. Okay, that is that it's a financial disaster. That Tughlaq was a misadventure. His both adventures were a misadventure. One was this introduction of the copper coins, and the other was the attempt to invade the Mongols, because he was defeated by the Mongols in Kashmir. Could not invade and defeat the Mongols also, and financially ultimately weakened also. Tughlaq's rule is gone, comes next Tughlaq. Muhammad bin Tughlaq's rule is gone, then comes the next Tughlaq who tries to revive the system. That's there. So we have to understand that Khilji was more successful. His approach, his strategies were more successful than that of Tughlaq. Tughlaq introduced copper coins, which lacked inherent value. Can you make a can you make a silver or a gold coin? No. That is why it was a more respected currency. Okay. So also the attempted the attempt to invade Mongol territory was defeated. So who is more successful, Khilji or Tughlaq? Khilji. I hope this much you have covered. Next class, what we'll be talking about is the Mughals in the north and the Vijayanagara and the Bahamanis in the south. Okay, and yes. Tomorrow there will be only one class of science and tech from 2:30 to 5. I'll take day after tomorrow. Okay, so that is there. Tomorrow there is only one class, 2:30 to 5, science and tech. And day after tomorrow, 2 classes most likely.